Okay.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here as we have people that are still joining the program. Welcome to the June 20th Ohio Federal Research Network Opportunity Days. I am Mark Bartman. I'll be sort of the MC for this morning. And we have two tremendous speakers, I think, that will be very interesting. And the topic also is interesting to me as well, as always. Next slide, Becky. So just a brief agenda, what we're looking at here. So have a couple of overviews, some programs and a few slides just to talk about myself here in the very beginning. And then we'll talk it over to the two highly qualified speakers that we have to talk about their area and research in quantum. And then a few slides at the end for some opportunities that are out there for those that might be interested that haven't seen them from the federal government. And then, of course, a wrap up. When we go through the presentations, please feel free to, at the end of the presentation, when we enter the Q&A time, to raise your hand or come off mute, and we will do the best to track you. You can also put your question in the chat, and Becky and Lauren will help to make sure that we try to get as many questions answered as we possibly can. If for some reason the question doesn't get answered and it's in the chat, because this is being recorded, we'll make sure that that the answer to that question gets posted when we post these slides online, which also usually answers a question that everybody has about whether or not they'll be able to get a copy of the slides. And yes, you will. Next slide, please. Again, just some quick thank yous, excuse me, to our Parallax team, Becky Mesher, Lauren Jones, Jess Pacheco, and John Jackson for putting all of this together. Again, I'll do the introductions here for our event speakers in just a few minutes, and also the opportunity review at the end of that. A big thank you, of course, to our federal partners, the Air Force Research Lab, the Navy Medical Research Unit in Dayton, and NASA Glenn in Cleveland, and the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and of course the Ohio National Guard for supporting everything that we do in the Ohio Federal Research Network. Next slide, please. Just for those maybe that aren't real familiar with the Ohio Federal Research Network and the construct and how it's set up, this is essentially the way that it works, is that all of the funding for this program comes from the state of Ohio. So thank you to all of our elected officials and the governor and the chancellor of the Ohio Department of Higher Education for being huge supporters of the Ohio Federal Research Network since it started in 2015. And we build these industry needs and federal partner needs together to come up with the areas of interest that we put out solicitations for every 2 years that matches up with the biennial budgeting cycle for the state of Ohio. Parallax is just the administrative arm of this process. All of the reviews and approvals go through our technical review council and our executive review board. Next slide, please. I call this kind of our bubble chart. So it just gives a roll up of where we're currently at after 8 years. So far, 22 universities and community colleges have been involved in the Ohio Federal Research Network. We're up to over 100 business partners, 13 spin-out companies so far in these first 6 rounds that have been created. To date, the state of Ohio has put just a little under $62 million into this program. And our return on investment by federal funding coming into the state is almost $375 million so far. And one of the things that I always like to point out is that as an indicator as to when a program is being successful is that you have partners that are willing to put their own funding into it. And so that cost share piece that you see in the bottom right is from our universities and industry partners and the amount of money that they have put in this program themselves to make it a success. Next slide, please. One of a new program that you may not have heard about is what we call the On-Ramp Hub Ohio program. It's funded through the Defense Innovation Unit, which falls directly under the Office of Secretary of Defense. Our partners here in Ohio are the Dayton Development Coalition, Jobs Ohio, and One Defense, which is an organization that has some deep roots in developing, providing venture capital and developing CEOs for small businesses that are highly successful. Next slide. So the program essentially is what we would call a front door to the defense innovation in the DoD and Ohio businesses. And really the purpose of this is to offer what we call tech pull. So we take problems that are sourced from the Secretary of Defense, the combatant commands around the globe, and we look around the state of Ohio and through our networks and through some data analytic capability to determine if there are solutions or companies with solutions to those particular problems, and then we make those connections with the combatant command or with the services to be able to provide quicker access to solutions to get it in the hands of our servicemen and women. The other thing that we do, which it may not be very well known, is that we can provide classified workspace for small businesses if that's something that you're interested in doing, or if you need some extra space to be able to do classified work. Happy to talk more about that at one-on-one with you. Next slide, please. The thing that kind of makes this program, the On-Ramp Hub program, unique is that there are a total of 5 states, so Ohio and the 4 other states that you see here, Arizona, Hawaii, Kansas, and Washington. We work together as partners. If there is a particular problem that's being sourced and maybe Ohio doesn't have the necessary expertise or the companies that are interested in that particular area, we can reach out to those other states, and likewise they can do the same with us. And we have done that several times over the last year as part of this contract. Next slide, please. This is just kind of a quick illustration of essentially the way the process works. So I mentioned that a problem is identified, and then the rest of this inverted pyramid is pretty much up to the individual states and the hubs to be able to identify the team through some of the means that I mentioned there on the right, assess the technology and the business readiness for that team. And then if necessary, we can assist with development through prototyping capabilities that we have with a number of our partners here in the state of Ohio. And then finally, of course, to transition that technology into the location or the area or the service or combatant command where they need it to meet the specific needs that they have identified. Next slide, please. A couple of one other program that some of you may be very familiar with, others maybe not, which is our Academic Partnership Engagement Experiment, or APEX, which is a nationwide program that Parallax manages as well. And it primarily is focused more on your small business innovation research and small business technology transfer programs, so your SBIR and SITR programs. Until just recently, it was a partnership intermediary agreement that was specifically connected to the United States Air Force. There was some language here that was just changed in the recent National Defense Authorization Act that opened that up. And so now they can work with all of the services under the Department of Defense to be able to support that particular program. So if you're a small business and you need some help, or you're looking for some funding through the Small Business Administration programs that are out there, and there are many within the federal government, then Apex would be happy to help you out with that. Next slide, please. And this just, again, is kind of a roll-up of what they've done over the last 4 or 5 years, approximately 4.5 years. since they've been were instituted back in 2019. I think one of the keys here is that so far they've had 7 of the programs that they've worked with that have actually transitioned to phase 3, which is that crossing the valley of death, which is actually the hardest part of everything that they do. So, and we also have a couple of companies that we work with here in Ohio and surrounding states as partners into this program to support small businesses for that. I will mention, because it is confusing, unfortunately, because of sometimes what the Department of Defense does, things like this, is that they recently changed the name of what many of you may have known as PTACs to Apex Accelerators. So this program, the Academic Partnership Engagement Experiment, which is APEX, is not the same thing as the Apex Accelerators. So 2 totally different programs. So if you've worked with an Apex Accelerator or a PTAC in the past, you may not have worked with this particular program. Again, feel free to reach out if you have any interest in this, and we'll be happy to make those connections for you. All right, next slide, please. And we jump to the end for some reason. Oh, there we go. All righty, excellent. So let me introduce our first guest speaker for today. Dr. Ahmet Erdemir is from the Cleveland Clinic. He's a veteran of computational biomechanics research and has had impactful contributions to metascience of modeling and simulation. He is also stewarding the scientific program of the Cleveland Clinic and the IBM Discovery Accelerator, a 10-year partnership to accelerate research and innovation at the intersection of biomedicine and advanced computing. Dr. Erdemir has established a strong research program in computational biomechanics at the Cleveland Clinic. Currently, he is an associate staff in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, the chief scientist of the Cleveland Clinic for the IBM Discovery Accelerator, and the interim director of the Office of Research Development at the Cleveland Clinic. Welcome to Dr. Erdemir, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here and like being able to talk to you, about what we do at the Cleveland Clinic and how actually what we do in the realm of biomedicine may relate to the interests of this group in here too. Next slide, please. Next. So I divided my presentation into 3 sections, and I will be first talking about what Cleveland Clinic IBM Discovery Accelerator is and its origins and like what we're broadly doing at a very high level. Then I will go into a little bit about quantum computing activities that we are doing like within the Discovery Accelerator, and then end it up with a section on like the project that we are doing and about how we can actually find overlaps and synergies with the aerospace industry or Air Force interests. Next, please. So really, like, we have a very like rooted institution at Cleveland and in Ohio and now in the world, and we have been around for more than 100 years now. And of course, like as computation evolved, we also recognize that we need to carve out a path to transform research through data. And thus, our goal is like to be able to learn from our patients and from like, real world data, from anything that we can actually learn and compute like, actionable knowledge for better care for each of one. And of course, there's an ecosystem that goes, through these processes because we need to build infrastructure for where the data comes from and where it might be like, mobilized and analyzed. And then we need to really conduct research and innovation like that leverages this data. And in the end, we hope to transform like what we know and what we can do for our patients, but also like for humanity, like through our science and patient care and how our findings may trickle down to public policy. And of course, we are building this learning health system right now at Cleveland Clinic, and like we're being very successful about that. But we also know that we cannot do it by ourselves, and we need partners. Next, please. So as I said, we are a very, kind of a veteran institution, like, of healthcare over, 100 years old. And now our mission doesn't focus on sickness. Our mission focuses on health. And that's why we stated our mission as caring for life and researching for health and educating those who serve. And if you look at on the logo of Cleveland Clinic, you can see that we are touching everyone from patients to community to organizations, like every aspects of society, including our caregivers through this, mission focusing on health. Next. And we have recently developed a rather elaborate like infrastructure where we can curate data, because we can use actually, I don't know, if we curate biospecimens that may be otherwise discarded, like those can be actually used for discovery and innovation. And we have just built an biorepository like on our campus. And with the support of the state of Ohio, we were able to build a Center for Pathogen Research and Human Health that more or less touches anything, that is like, improve human health and conduct like cutting edge research. And we are expanding our research space and increasing our data and computational needs, where we also identify at the same time critical synergies and, push our research further. Next. And our partnership with IBM is like, one aspect of it, because again, we realize that we need to be really fast in like learning and adapting computational strategies, or even like inventing new ones that might be more amenable to biomedicine. And thus we, combined our like powers, like, with the industry leader, like, in the computational technology domain, and where we bring our like, biomedical expertise, our vision like for biomedical research and healthcare, and we conduct research in collaboration together. And quantum computing is like a big portion of it. And we are active in the areas of AI and digital technologies, high performance computing, and hybrid cloud, where we are exploring how we can really put disruptive technologies at work and for our research. And of course, education and outreach is a big component of what we do, because we know that we need to upskill ourselves, our people that is on the field, but also prepare the next generation of workforce to be able to move across disciplines. Next. And again, like we are very active in high performance computing, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. We consider these as programs. In each of those programs, we have more than a handful of projects now, and this is actually just like 2 years old, like partnership that are started to like provide some results, like in a variety of areas, where the technical areas help us elevate like the biomedical like research domains. And I will give some examples of those projects when we talk about quantum computing as well too. But it goes from supporting basic science, basics, biomedical science, to clinical research, like through artificial intelligence or quantum computing, just to explore, how we can future-proof our research and our capabilities, like in future, and can we actually leverage this disruptive technology? Because AI is the technology of today. Quantum computing is the technology of tomorrow, and we really want to be prepared. But as we are preparing for it, we also like find exciting venues and solutions to be able to impact biomedicine and healthcare. Next. And again, we gained like a lot of traction. If you look at this QR code, like you can actually see all our like studies that are moving on. We have more than 40 studies, like in all those 3 areas that I show you. And we have been fortunate that we were able to bring in a lot of, the early generation of investigators in biomedicine, computing scientists from a diverse groups, like from diverse aspects of the society, to start learning from high school to like postdocs. And one area that might be interesting to this group, particularly small businesses, is this year we actually just started a new program where we are, having a competition for startups to come and explore the utilization and application of quantum computing in biomedicine, like together, like on our campus. And you will probably see next year's announcements like coming up as well. Next. And again, just to return back to partnership, we cannot do this by ourselves. And we also realize that, Cleveland Clinic and IBM, while we actually established a great partnership, we need to extend these partnerships like beyond Ohio, within Ohio, beyond Ohio, and across the international domains too. And our ecosystem is now reaching like, industry, like, drug companies, funding, in organizations like international, like UK Science and Innovation. But we are also active, like, in the federal government domain too, like connecting with a bunch of federal agencies as well. And of course, we are gaining a lot of reputation in how we are doing, how we are actually going from zero of quantum computing to, or like, kind of like a very structured and integrated technology adoption to a, accelerated discovery and innovation. Next slide. And yeah, again, like we look at everyone as potential partners, like research institutes, local, regional, like, across the nation or worldwide communities, because what we do is very translational. It impacts like, everyone in the society, any industry from drug companies to, computational platform builders to, software developers to, medical devices. And of course, we are connected with startups, payers, government, and university and colleges. Next. So I'm gonna a little bit talk about in more detail what we are doing in the quantum computing domain so that you can actually be grounded about what's happening in the Discovery Accelerator now and where we intend to go. Next. So this is really a key piece, like, in our research, because we actually had a quantum computer, IBM Quantum System 1 installed in our Learner Research Institute. And if you happen to be in Cleveland, please let me know and we'll be happy to, like, show you, where it is and give you a tour and tell, you more in detail about how we are using it. And really it's the first private installation of quantum computer, and also in the first installation in healthcare across the world as well too. And really it is inspiring in a way to all of us because, like, down by our offices, like we have a, very sophisticated equipment which we consider it as an, equipment that we use in our experimentations too, that we can do quantum computing experiments. Next. And our goal is, of course, like, how can we, leverage quantum computing for biomedicine and be really early in the game? And we want to create roadmaps for evaluation of quantum computing because it's a nascent technology. It's evolving very fast. And, sometimes it may work for our purposes, sometimes it may not work. And we need that structure. And of course, our goal is to demonstrate quantum utility in computational biomedicine. And while we are doing it, to build a quantum computing community and to democratize accessibility of quantum computing, and particularly in among domain-specific, investigators or application specialists that might be a little bit far from like hardcore computer scientists or physicists. Next. And we have a domain agnostic approach, and I mean, domain is like very, kind of like bounded by the biomedical discovery, biomedicine, but like within biomedicine, like we approach that, hey, we want to actually, be able to impact any system organ, like where we can capture the full view of disease and the continuum of healthcare, which is essentially driven by our interests at the Cleveland Clinic and in the biomedical research ecosystem. And then of course, with the IBM, we are coming from like, the aspects of how can we have a digital infrastructure that actually matches that need in a timely manner and in actually, with capabilities that can bridge data types that can be agnostic to disease or biomedical domain and that are scalable. And our concept is that, hey, we are actually doing a lot of research and also applications that touches every aspect of healthcare and every aspect of biomedical research, like from drug discovery, that is like where chemistry comes into play, to clinical and bedside translation, to population and behavior research that can impact in, individuals and societies, like, in their like, locality and in their environments. And the foundational like data types that we have to work with, like, in omics, physiology, and imaging, and how we can like combine all those things together, pushed by our intention to accelerate discovery and innovation in biomedicine, and like, our like partners like capabilities and vision and innovation in digital infrastructure and technology. Next. And and this is our like colleagues in IBM like also like worked on based on, and we also like kind of resonated with L as we are working together, because we see like three kind of very domain agnostic areas, I would say, like simulating nature, processing data that has complex structure, or search and optimization, right? And of course, that allows us to give some grounding about what kind of domain agnostic like algorithms, applications, or initiatives we need that might actually like, that with one hammer we can actually address like, multiple problems and multiple challenges in biomedicine. And these can all like fall down to, again, drug discovery, where like, we need to do the de novo design of structure, proteins, and precision medicines, like, that covers from like, classification to intervention, diagnostics, or in the logistical side, healthcare process optimization and population health management. Next. And And of course, our approach is not necessarily like gang ho, and we're like, let's attack everything and try to like, figure it out, because we know that quantum computing may not be able to solve our problem, or may be able to solve our problem, but not now because of the technological capability limitations. But can we actually learn something with what we have, and can we inform like how the technology develops on the computing side, but also can we really see the signs of, are we getting utility? Are we getting advantage by using quantum computing? And we start with a driving biomedical problem. And from that driving biomedical problem, we try to see the frontier projects. And because it is very possible that our, project or our like problem that we might want to solve, maybe like too big, maybe the vision is great, but it might need to be reduced for us to be able to tackle and to show some signs of like, excitement and, capability. Now, if we, identify that frontier project, then we actually really need to see, okay, we have quantum computing hardware, quantum computing simulators, but then do we need like any additional like quantum computing software tools, algorithms, and etc. So that is like, suddenly splits into one arm of research that is more interesting, possibly for the computational scientists that might come to the team. But then on the other end, we need to upskill and train our biomedical workforce, like so that they can be savvy, like, and that is a very diverse workforce that can be a pure experimentalist that may not touch with computers that much, to as someone that can be doing a lot of cutting edge like modeling and simulation, like with, classical computing, I will say, including high performance computers, but, classical, like, compared to quantum. And, but they might want to do that jump. And we bring those people together with this mindset to demonstrate really advantage on that reduced problem, because well, if we demonstrate that, it gives an opportunity to double down, because as the technology evolves and the technology tools, algorithms becomes more available or like inspired to be developed, then we can scale to the full problem after that. Next. And now we have actually a lot of like quantum projects. Like I'm not going to go in each of those detail, and you can find this list online as well too. But the important things you will realize is they are diverse. It comes from like cancer detection to like, more chemistry focused like problems to more like cellular investigations. Some of them like relates to AI, ML, like, with electronic health records. So it's very diverse because our needs like for computation and like, for discovery in that area is diverse. And we have very immediate needs, but even in that immediate needs, like we see the potential that, oh, quantum computing may actually provide us some interesting results that we may not get otherwise. And that actually really allows our Cleveland Clinic biomedical researchers, our clinicians, to, work with the, you know, technical researchers in the computational area, like from the IBM, to come up with those projects and like to really then, once those projects are approved for execution, like, to start like, going through the whole aspects of the like workflow as I described you before. Next. And I will talk a little bit about some of the recent work that was done, like, by Brian Robinault, like who was a like postdoc, like in our institution, who was a computational chemistry person. He didn't have much expertise with quantum computing, but going through this process, like, that we actually environment and the structure that we provided, like he actually, gained a lot of interaction about like protein structure prediction. This is an important problem for us because if we know the protein structure in hand, we can understand how and why medicine works. So we really can prescribe medicine, or we can actually like, develop new medicine. Next. Now, how this is done, normally you can actually, sequence the genome and proteome, and then based on that, you can do experimentally, determine protein structures. It's very hard, it's very expensive. That's why, it doesn't scale as much. And of course, the in silico protein structure prediction, like using computational approaches is a big thing too. But a lot of and even in the in silico, you can see two different, like, schools of thought. One is data driven, like any AI ML models that can actually predict protein structures from like, prior knowledge and prior data that we have, or physics-based, like, approaches like that actually like simulates the, protein folding and the protein structure prediction. And of course, like, they also have like, some advantages and disadvantages too, because if you're like going to a data-driven approach, if the data space of the design space is too large, then, will that data-driven approach give you like, good results? And what if like, that some area that we have never collected any experimental data? And of course, the physics-based simulations, like, these are just simply costly. And that's why we cannot actually simulate like large molecules. And next, please. And that's where, the sign of quantum advantage may come from, right? Because like, can a quantum computer formulate the search space when classical computer runs out of steam? That's actually, interesting question that we can explore with our strategy. Or, can we actually go through that search space like better or faster, like, beyond our like, current like, search and optimization approaches, like, becomes like bottleneck. And of course, another goal is, can we go beyond system sizes or like beyond molecule sizes that are currently limited by classical hardware? And next, please. And this is actually what Brian did. And he really like, tested a quantum algorithm, with a known experimental structure. So that's basically that known experimental structure was not given to any of the AlphaFold or like the quantum computing algorithm, but Brian asked himself, I wonder if I can predict this experimental structure with AlphaFold or with quantum computing. And he actually get good results. And there are like two success stories in here. And one success story is like a computational chemist who has not seen like, quantum computing and not an expert before is like, getting into that discipline and working with like other computational scientists who might be savvy with quantum computing and being able to actually integrate and incorporate quantum computing into his workflow. And the second success story is, I think like they are doing a better job than AlphaFold does. So that's kind of like exciting, and that's what they're exploring further. Next, please. And if you want more information about what they've been doing, like they recently, published a perspective article on how to do protein structure prediction using quantum computers. And I highly recommend you to, download it from archive and take a look at it if this is your area of interest. Next. So, and I'm going to go a little bit now about how what we do with quantum computing in biomedicine may relate to aerospace. And this is actually a study that was graciously funded, like, you know, uh, mm, by the, Air Force. And that's what we hope to like, explore in this. This is a meta study, I will say it like so. And we really want to see, hey, if what we do in biomedicine is applicable to aerospace or vice versa. Because this like meta hypothesis is important. And the reason is because when the technology is so disruptive and changing fast, we might be able to get help among disciplines between each other too, and in a variety of ways that I might actually talk a little bit about it. Next, please. So what we want to do is to map domain agnostic computational science problems like optimization and algorithms to domain specific challenges. and establish overlaps across like biomedical and aerospace sector. And you might be familiar to the word dual use. And that's what we really wanted to create and see like, what are like all possible dual use scenarios that might be benefit from like quantum computing. And of course, while we are doing that, we can also establish a roadmap for prioritization, design, and deployment of quantum computing projects for domain-specific demonstrations and utility assessment. And what I'm like meaning by this is that really codifying like what we did, like create almost like a standard and operating procedures that is discipline agnostic. So what we did for biomedicine, maybe like someone in uh, aerospace sciences like may come and like take what we did. Oh, I'm gonna apply it to like our disciplines, like to create that structure about like how we can explore quantum computing. And this is actually like, the figure in here like shows our thinking. And this is something that we, submitted to a grant because what we want to do in the biomedicine is we really want to understand the molecular foundations of life. And this actually relates to a lot of the, simulating nature. We want to extract knowledge on life. That's where like a lot of the data-driven approaches, AI, ML may fit. And we want to see resource allocation in life. And this is a lot of search and optimization may also come into because resource allocation in life is all scheduling, logistics. Those are important problems for biomedical research, like allocating research resources, or for healthcare, allocating like making scheduling patients with the correct place, correct time. But resource allocation is even a problem in the cellular level. Like cellular cells have like some form of a ways of like doing that resource allocation. But as you go down from this like application areas, domain specific scientific applications, everything else is domain agnostic. We need to have end user developer interfaces. Need to have domain agnostic applications like solving optimization problems, or we need to create a toolboxes basically. And a lot of foundational algorithms underlying both software and hardware infrastructure for people to be able to like develop algorithms and then create applications on top of this. This is really the software stack like underneath it. And that's like collaboration we are also bringing in our like university partners. But the same thing can apply in aerospace, in material science, in any other discipline, as a matter of fact. The only thing you are changing is the top row. Next, please. And but again, we need to engage the domain scientists, and domain scientists, I mean, like someone like me, for example, does biomechanics research, like for, musculoskeletal care. So I'm not a computer scientist. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. As I said, Brian was a computational chemistry person. I mean, he does computational stuff, but he does chemistry more. So, so it is actually a little bit intimidating to get into the, quantum computing, like for us. And the other aspect is our priorities are different. We are not primarily driven by making quantum computing better, or we are not primarily driven by making quantum hardware better. We are primarily driven by solving our biomechanics problem or solving our like protein structure identification problem. We just want to know if quantum computing is a good hammer, and that's what we want to get. So, and that actually creates an interesting way of like how we can actually bring those domain scientists and engage with like hardcore computer scientists or physicists or like with others too, because there are challenges, because we need to appreciate what it can do now and what it can do tomorrow. And that should be a way like for us to be able to go through the process rather than trying to run like a headless chicken in a way. And we need to, once we appreciate what it can do now, once we appreciate what it can do tomorrow, we need to devise a pragmatic path so that we can actually impact domain specific work. So we may not solve our problem, but will we be able to generate a sign that this might be a really good thing that we should pursue for a while? Because then we know that it will really creates an important like keystone in our like strategy like to solve our challenge. And we need to learn the fundamentals. Like it was the first time I learned about a block sphere, like when I was getting into the quantum computer. It's still confusing to me. And we need to evaluate and scale what we do to solve this domain specific problem. So, and I think this is the like pathway we need to generate. And that pathway not only shows the domain scientists, hey, how you can get into this, but also like, decide yourself, like number one, if you want to get into this, and what is your exit strategy if you want to establish one. Next, please. And again, our domain specific problem space is large. Like, but it is kind of like, agnostic within biomedicine, right? If you look at drug discovery, you might want to find new targets, new molecular structures, new biologics. When you look at clinical bedside translation, you need to want to phenotype, you need to like, manage resources. You need to do, some logistics. But if you look at omics, physiology, imaging, you can consider all of these, or like even population and behavior, as data in, knowledge out kind of aspects. And they might use like some transformation function like in between, that might be in the form of optimization, machine learning, or things. And all those things can also be done by quantum too, because quantum computing just gives another opportunity for us in what we might not be able to solve, we might be able to solve with this. And that actually like, creates a choice that, can give us like really the cutting edge and the opportunity. Next, please. And if you look at the aerospace domain, this is actually this domain list is one of our biomedical researchers like just did literature research and just come up with, I think this is what Air Force research may be interested in. But if you look at these and the previous slide, there's a lot of overlaps. In the end, everything trickles down to a resource allocation problem, right? Or I, as a biomechanics person, I actually relate to anything that is done in human performance aspect, like health and human resource, because everything that we do for clinics, everything that we do for biomedical research directly applies there. But we can actually find those like overlaps. Next. And again, these are all like domain agnostic computational challenges. I'm not going to go in detail, and there are just a bunch of keywords, but they are domain agnostic. It applies for aerospace, it applies for biomedicine. Next. And of course, like, our strategies, if we can solve one challenge in one discipline, maybe we can use the experience to accelerate solutions in another discipline, then effectively utilize software and hardware infrastructure across diverse disciplines, but facilitate workforce mobility. Maybe a biomedical engineer decides to pivot and then may start working for an aerospace company. And scale transdisciplinary education and upskilling. And this is important because for application developers, it's more about them having an arsenal of all the problems that they see and how things are related to each other. Next. And again, the same chart, it just applies driving biomedical problem, driving aerospace problem, but it all emerges from a domain agnostic challenge. And if we can relate from our discipline, then we can talk to other disciplines as well. Next, please. And I'm just going to quickly go through like some of the just demonstrating how this the mindset applies. And this is actually one of our like investigators is working on an image segmentation problem. Object detection in images. It doesn't matter if you detect MRI images. It doesn't matter if you detect aerial, pictures. It's the same problem. There are some nuances, but like, for the same investigator may be able to create a solution for one and apply it to another. Next. And they actually identify through our structured approach of finding like, research problem and now finding it, that already identify quantum computing methodology. Next. And they apply this to, image segmentation of buildings. Well, from an image segmentation perspective, this is not necessarily a really great algorithm because it doesn't really do well, but it demonstrates that we can actually do segmentation, image segmentation with quantum computing. And a biomedical scientist on seemingly disparate like data types, like, in aerial images can show that. Next. And they also did that for, MRI imaging as well. So it actually works, or the mindset works, I will say. Next. And yeah, I just want to like thank the funding, like, that we achieved, like to compare these, like, cross-domain like overlaps and how we can strategize. And I'm looking forward to talk to you more about that. And I will also want to acknowledge that the team that is doing this, because I'm just essentially presenting what they had done, and not much contributions otherwise. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll be happy to entertain questions.
Yeah, awesome. So please, if you have questions, you can raise your hand. You can come off of mute. You can put a question in the chat. I'll give everybody a second to type here if you'd like. While we're waiting, actually, so one of the interesting things that you mentioned towards the end, Ahmet, dealt with workforce, and so obviously there's the state of Ohio and higher ed and also Department of Education. They're interested in making sure that the workforce of the future is met here for the state of Ohio for the needs in particular that we have. So I was just curious, where do you see examples of workforce crossing disciplines when it comes to what you talked about here?
I think like if we are talking about applications, I always give this example from my old school mechanical engineering work. I do a lot of finite element analysis, and I was trained as a mechanical engineer. The nonlinearity of the tissue is the same as nonlinearity of rubber and the tires. So anybody who does FEA in I can actually recruit, the same engineer if they want to pivot like from tire industry to a biomedical industry, I will recruit in my lab or vice versa. And I think this applies like for quantum computing or any disruptive technology too, because these are very sophisticated hammers that can solve like challenging nonlinear problems in one domain. But the moment there is a reflection of the or manifestation of the same problem in another domain, that same workforce can move on and then can apply. And I think that's very interesting too. And I see that many of our like biomedical workforce like transitioning sometimes to, aerospace industry because the problems are this kind very similar and nonlinear. And they, deal with those nonlinearities and the challenge of tackling those problems.
Excellent. Yeah, this very interesting. I think too, probably a lot of people here in the state on this. Let's see, any questions? I don't see any yet. So we do have one individual in the chat there just asking if you're available for follow-up discussion at some point. So we'll.
Of course, like, I have the computational life sciences like email address there, but you can also directly contact me in my email that I'll be happy to share. And you can, find it by Google pretty easily too.
Yeah.
So yeah, please, like, I encourage, like, shoot me an email and, we will just like start, go to deeper discussions.
Awesome. Yeah. And I put in the chat, but I'll mention it just again, is that the slides will be posted on the OhioFRN.org website here, probably be next week sometime as far as timing goes for that. But I'll let Becky correct me if I'm wrong there. She can put something in the chat about that too, as far as expectations are concerned for that. So. All right, fantastic. Well, I don't see any other questions, so we'll go ahead and go on to our next speaker. So again, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so let me introduce our next speaker. Dr. Charles Cerny is the Principal Electronic Engineer for the Air Force Research Laboratory. He's assigned to the Sensors Directorate, where he has both conceptualized and characterized innovative RF architectures requiring the integration of novel component subsystem technologies based in photonics, semiconductors, and superconductors in conjunction with complex RF signal processing, meeting the needs for military and aerospace communities. He is also the co-inventor on 6 U.S. patents for microelectronics apparatus or processes. Dr. Cerny has been a member of the Kitty Hawk AOC chapter since 2007. He's a past chair of the IEEE Dayton section and was recently inducted into Eta Kappa News professional career chapter. So congratulations on that, Dr. Cerny, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity today to talk about our project with OFRN. And with that, then let's go ahead and get started. So next slide, please. All right. So About a year ago, the Air Force Research Laboratory was finishing up a phase 2 SBIR with a company in Colorado that was working on Rydberg additive sensor cell designs. And we saw this as an opportunity not only to further develop that technology, but also to integrate it with something that was happening within the state of Ohio, which is looking at novel waveforms as well as the photonic components to allow for greater integration, and then to really see whether or not we can have a functional quantum sensor that can be used in kind of portable applications. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to break this up into probably 2 sections mainly, but let's start with why quantum. There is obviously, as you saw in the previous presentation, a lot of interest in quantum, and you heard that term quantum advantage. This is certainly being studied in great detail by a lot of think tanks, Department of Defense, government, business, in order to make certain of the fact that what we see is the opportunity for quantum technologies to provide probably greater information access and is more specifically in quantum sensors, sensitivity and precision that probably are going to be beyond what we know now today as classical technologies. So sensors have their point and place in many applications and many requirements for gaining and gathering information. And in this particular case, we've focused on the electromagnetic spectrum, which certainly is very dense and getting more dense as time goes by, as greater releases of the 5G, 6G, and beyond happen. So there's an awful lot of information there that needs to be both gleaned and then, in this particular case, summarized. So quantum sensors should allow us to give us that advantage. And at the same time, too, you see that this is a global problem and there's a global competition. So we want to make certain that not only we're staying technically astute in this area, but also that we are all providing that kind of leading edge capability that can be used in a variety of applications. And even it supports items under the Secretary of the Air Force's operational imperatives, since being able to sense electromagnetic activity from platforms that are in motion is a true challenge. So we've certainly tried to have this conversation with both the OFRN, with AFRL, as well as the DoD, to make certain that not only are we seeding this idea, but also kind of generating what we need to have as far as the research and the application, first for the Department of Defense, but then onward and outward for dual use technology, as well as probably a multidisciplinary environment. All right, next view graph. Okay, so and certainly part of that is making certain that we are first addressing some of the scientific and technical transitions that are necessary, and as we had put together our program for this OFRN, we saw that it was also aligning with some of the other commercialization and transition opportunities in the state of Ohio and in the region, because this infrastructure that we would need to have in order to move from the prototype that will be produced from this OFRN project for quantum will also then have some basis for looking at where the other challenges for not only furthering the integration, but then also the ruggedization, so that we can begin to address other case studies and other challenging problems. So in this particular project, although we have the access to quantum computing and quantum algorithms, we are really focusing on the sensor and then where that, as it actually interfaces with the electromagnetic spectrum, allows for a much greater in-depth analysis of that particular set of spectrum transmissions, as well as what we can see could be used for trying to find out location and other information associated with that particular emitting signal. All right, so we are now probably closing in on about the 9-month period of this OFRN, and in doing so, we have communicated this information to the AFRL Midwest network, and they are giving us an opportunity to see whether or not we can extend this work for further use cases and studies that would put us out for another 24-month study and then further use of the OFRN prototype produced within the next year. And then, of course, with that, then this gives us an opportunity to see the possibility for licensing and transition of technologies. Next slide. Okay. Now, although we've done first-level market research, we also see that there's a strong importance for trying to have this be developed and cradled in Ohio. As we were saying before, the multidisciplinary aspect of this particular project, not only the Rydberg atomic sensor, the waveforms that have to be put together, the development kits that are part of that prototype, the photonic components, have their places within the state of Ohio and can clearly reach out and begin to build an even greater infrastructure, to really footprint the basic idea of this quantum sensor prototype and use of the quantum sensor in the state of Ohio, but then once again, allowing for us to have that part of that market share for licensing various portions of that quantum sensor prototype, but then also giving us a chance to probably have greater interactions with other organizations that probably will bring us, and we will study these use cases. And I will try to touch on that, but the idea is that the market is growing, and certainly I look at it as that there's about 4 different sectors associated with quantum. You heard about the quantum computation. There is the quantum cryptography, which obviously allows for certain security. There are quantum algorithms and there are quantum sensors. That's something that came out of the OSD study that they see as, obviously 4 distinct application areas, but also market areas that have connectivity as well as great growth potential. So we are very pleased with this group under the OFRN that there is a strong basis for building a market case, but then also allowing us the opportunity to continue this dialogue with groups like the Defense Innovation Unit, as well as the Office of Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering in Quantum Science and Information. Next slide. All right, so let me shift and talk a little bit about how this sensor works. So in the pictures, I'll move around from the upper left, where you see this one block called Simple Setup. And by actually capturing in a small, what they call a vapor cell, rubidium atoms, you are now isolating them to be more or less a, a vibrating atomic dipole. So this is a very, very atomic level version of an antenna. And we use 3 lasers within this particular setup in order for us to first set up the absorption. So we are probing that particular atom. So we allow for that atom to have a stability point. And then when we have this, I've moved from absorption to the center point, and that electromagnetic induced transparency comes from the second laser. So that allows you now to provide the essentially becoming a filtering of this particular energy. So you can begin to do your tuning. So you begin with probing and then controlling. And then finally, you have a specific wavelength that will now couple with your electromagnetic waveform. So now we move here, and you see that the electromagnetically induced transparency is actually split, so it becomes very much like a filter, so that it can actually couple with that waveform, and now you actually have tuned specifically to that wavelength of that RF energy, and now you've captured it for recording, for analysis, and determined that the sensitivity of that particular waveform and its characteristics are potentially greater than what we see from a classical design. So all these are items that we work on from this particular project, but this is the fundamental basis of the quantum advantage of a Rydberg atom cell. Next slide. All right, so with that, you see down in the lower left our kind of experimental setup that we've put in place where we're gathering data under the OFRN project, but a listing there of what a quantum sensor could offer in this hybrid design, and understanding the fact that the members of our team from Ghostwave and that group are actually building out these noising waveforms, which will now allow for some unique coupling and security, so that therefore you could clearly have probably an advantage and prevent non-secure communications. We have been having an open dialogue with NASA and AFRL, as I had mentioned earlier, to try to understand additional use cases. And as we think about this too, we know that there are risks that we have to make certain that we address. And although they're listed there on the right part of the slide, one of the things that we have come from our critical design review or their preliminary design review that we did earlier this year was to develop essentially a series of what we call system hardware and software requirements acceptance table. So there's a small snapshot of that there, but as we go through, we do our check boxes and we also continue that analysis. And from that then, there is a project that we are now working on and developing within the Sensors Directorate to build a secondary column for independent testing that will happen after this OFRN in 2025. So once again, continuing to try to make certain of the fact that we both have the performance metrics we need, but then you also see that Ghostwave and Converge have done a very smart, I guess you could say, application or idea of bringing in some PhD candidates to be interns at that facility and have been actively engaged in the OFRN project as part of their learning experience and, of course, workforce development. Next slide. All right. And once again, collaboration continues to grow. I already talked about the ourselves being part of this project, and this has been, I think, a very good experience from a multidisciplinary research task. You see there the idea that we have also continued to speak to the Space Force, Army DevCom, Naval Research Laboratory. All of these entities are interested in quantum sensing, and they all have unique applications and case studies. Everything from very low frequency work, communication. They're interested in doing what they call direction of arrival and direction finding of signals. So finding those sources passively is very critical when there's a very dense electromagnetic environment. The team there, which we've spoken to, and Converge and Ohio State and UDRI are great contributors, along with Inflection and Ghostwave, to make certain of the fact that, once again, what we are producing as a prototype is steps ahead of what we see need to happen for giving us a quantum advantage for the sensing aspect. There's a quote there from the new senior scientist for quantum science and technology. She also has been briefed on this work and is pleased knowing that we are pushing that one of those quadrants, but then also having it be connected to the quantum algorithm piece. And, once again, we are, very pleased to be part of this project very actively. And we've moved now from kind of the in-kind portion of this project to actually, making an in-house investment to make certain that we will do some of that independent testing in 2025. All right, next slide. All right, so here's our block diagram. I won't go into too many details, but I think what I want to point out is that earlier on you saw the Rydberg cell, the rubidium atom vapor cell, which is over there on the left, and when we talked about the probing and the tuning and the excitation, and all of those now become integrated with a waveform development kit that Ghostwave and Converge have put together as part of an Army project. So there's a very good match there for applications already. Ohio State University's quantum science department is working on the wavelength converter in order to make certain of the fact that, one, we can do greater tuning of that wavelength so we can have greater access to that spectrum, and also making certain of the fact that we're getting the right type of power matching and levels, since we realize that this is something that has to have a good match between the atomic level and then the photonic level and then into the electronics for analysis. And at various points along the way, the quantum algorithms that are being developed by UDRI become, for lack of a better term, these probe points to see where we can determine characteristics of the signal, and then also determine if we are actually having a greater sensing modality. So one of the things that I want to kind of point out here, and going along, I think, also with the previous speaker, a waveform itself, it has certain characteristics and shapes very much like an image. And we recognize the fact that both the quantum algorithms, maybe coupled with some type of machine learning techniques, will allow us now to probably more rapidly access and test what we would see as the characteristics of a lot of these unique waveforms that are being produced not only from software-defined systems, such as what's being produced by Ghostwave and Converge, but those that are essentially being developed by others that we could probably go ahead and sense. All right, next slide. All right, so this is my last slide. So talking about where we are headed, I had mentioned earlier that we had now picked up some in-house funding in 2025. So we're already kind of planning what will be kind of an independent test and maybe some type of what I consider to be a signal obstacle course for the prototype. So we have the facilities here at AFRL at Wright-Patt. I certainly have seen the positive impact of having the interns be in this OFRN effort. And of course, once again, that's part of that workforce development. We're continuing to explore how this Rydberg atom can be used for direction finding and angle of arrival. And there's a lot of applications there from the DoD and the other entities that might want to do what they call passive source localization. We're certainly on the pathway for providing a more integrated prototype. We are also standing up at the Sensors Directorate a software-defined receiver laboratory, and in July, we have an opportunity to have some discussion there between the OFRN team and the AFRL lab group that's putting that together. And the algorithm development, I think, as I had mentioned earlier, is also very critical, and we're finding its way into how we really assess the quantum advantage of this particular Rydberg atom sensor. Horizon scans are part of some of the things that we do within AFRL, and that makes certain that not only from a U.S. perspective, but an international perspective, we see where that technology is going and being applied, but then also allows us to have a greater customer dialogue and potential opportunities for transition and licensing, as my last bullet tries to convey as we think about preparing ourselves for a phase 3, over the next year to 18 months. Okay, with that then, that concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So it appears we do have one question from Kevin Busto. He says gigahertz frequencies required, but what I'm not sure is exactly what that was a reference to, unless it makes sense to you. I can have Kevin come off mute and ask the question too.
Yeah, Kevin, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so are you saying can we use this for gigahertz frequencies? Is that what the question is guided towards?
Actually, I'm glad I'm talking to you. Yes, exactly.
All right, so let me say this much. The first test that we will do will actually be at 2.4 gigahertz, and it may have been in the block diagram, but that was because of the fact that some of that testing had already been done both at Ghostwave Converge as well as Inflection, who builds the Rydberg atom sensor. So we thought that was one of the easiest tests, knowing that we are doing a little more integration and some software-defined, computation and prototyping. So, but certainly we recognize the fact that both the waveform development kit as well as the wavelength converter can move around in the spectrum and then allow for greater tuning, and then of course, finding signals of interest as requested by either a customer or a specific need.
Okay. Now, the Rydberg atom is primarily then used as the directional finder. Is that what you're saying with this?
Well, we are exploring that because what we had as the SBIR with Inflection was to see if that could that possibility could be achieved. Now, with the help of the OFRN, we think that we will go ahead and be able to at least initially validate what we would think is like kind of like an angle of arrival or a direction finding capability with with some signals as they're being exercised in say an anechoic chamber.
Yeah, I tried that with graphene. It had a number of issues with graphene, but I think this is a good direction to give it a try, and trying to use it as a at the atomic level.
Sure. No, and once again, as I had mentioned earlier, you've got for lack of a better term, a dipole, because it is resonating, and it can couple with an RF signal when properly tuned. So with that, then we think that there are certainly direction finding algorithms that can put in the software defined receiver that can now give us that type of level of signal classification and information.
Now, of course, you and I know what a dipole is, but are we talking about a number of dipoles collectively moving at the same time to make it directional?
So that is under thought with inflection, and that is probably something that we will probably conclude when we do the in-house testing, is that what would be a better future design. So certainly there are ways to move from a single atom or a group of atoms to somewhat like an array. And I think actually if you go to the next slide, over on the right, you see that's their conceptual design. So so Kevin, where you see the different colors, those are actually various Rydberg cells that could be designed to function as an array.
Interesting. Almost like a beam antenna. Okay.
Yes, correct.
And we have one more question here. So thanks, Kevin.
Okay.
Appreciate those questions. Let me.
Thank you, Kevin.
So Demir here says, have you considered Rydberg atom-based RF emitter and its possible advantages and applications?
So at this point in time, an emitter itself is a little challenging since you would also be able to have to project that power, but that is being considered as a study function, especially for the Space Force, since they are looking at long-range secure communications, possibly with quantum sensors and with quantum transmitters. So we probably will stay closely engaged with that, as they just had this university consortium about 2 weeks ago, and that is one of the topics that they're likely to let as what they call a multi-university research initiative in the next probably 6 to 12 months.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. Any other questions here? If not, to keep us on time.
Could I ask one more question?
Yep, we'll give you the last one, Kevin.
All right, thank you. Are you getting gain out of this? Is that possible? And how low is the standing wave ratio, if you can computate that?
So those two items are being, it's a good question. Those two items are actually being evaluated right now. We've begun some preliminary testing, so they are part of our checklist. So if you stay tuned, we will get that information available to you. But the lab test should be concluding probably by the end of this month.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd
be interested in being involved. It's a very sensitive part to myself here. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Cerny. Appreciate
Sure.
the information. So.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All righty. Next slide, Becky. So now just got a couple slides here on some opportunities that are coming up. So I will turn it over to Alexander to go through some of those.
Okay. All right. Good morning. Yeah, we'll spend a minute or two on each of these. These are just light overviews of what were listed on the mostly grants.gov, but we had gone through quite a few different opportunity portals. So this first one here is a Health Science Foundation grant, and they are looking for basic summaries and proposals that will advance healthcare needs and such. They are specifically looking for things that are not incremental or not in a clinical trial stage, and they're accepting any kind of high quality submissions that propose revolutionary technologies that meet the goal of the Health Science Foundation. And the particular ones in our interest would be innovative approach at the intersection of artificial intelligence, high performance computing, including quantum computing, and biological systems, including enabling de novo designs of biomolecules with entirely new phenotypes. They didn't list any of the fundings, but they're expecting to do about 100 awards. And yeah, that's about all for this one. Next slide, please. So this is a thermal transport process grant listed by the material, or the National Science Foundation. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. And so again, they are interested in new technologies. It seems to be a pretty simple one page. The ones that are particular for us are thermal science and quantum technology interface, any kind of quantum sensors for thermal measurement, quantum computing for sciences, thermodynamics and novel cryogenic cooling concepts for quantum devices, and the transport and quantum materials and quantum phenomena. So this, again, has an estimated total program of about 7 million, but didn't exactly list how many awards that they were trying to give out or any individual awards. It's just a grant offered for any novel designs. And we can go to the next. So this is the Laboratory of Physical Sciences. It's a joint effort between Material Command in the Army and NASA. And they are also looking for, they want to do an incubator collaboration and fellowship research. So they want to pursue disruptive and fundamental research enabling technologies with a focus on qubit development for quantum computing. And they are expecting to try and build a team that will tackle this for relevant long-term problems in quantum information science and technologies. Again, they didn't list any of the funding opportunities or actual information that would be relevant for the depths of it. And these last two here, so these last two, the dates on them are very short. And so I added them just to show that we had gone through and found every opportunity that had relevance to the quantum field. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is a global information and communications technology, and they're supporting international standard development. Again, this is a team building exercise. They have the nonprofits that we would fall under, as well as public international organizations that are meant to be applying for this. But I highlighted in red that the due date for this doesn't give us a lot of time to kind of get together on it. But the project's supposed to support an international standards development process, grounded in transparency and private sector leadership and public sector support. It's supposed to enhance like-minded nations' representations and an expanded number of countries that are aligned with the USG vision. But there is one last one. We can go to the last one here. There was one more from NAVAIR, and it was a broad agency announcement. They didn't as well release much information, but they were interested in any summaries and submissions from interested parties for the Navy's NAVAIR sector that would have to do with quantum computing. And that's about it.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Alexander. Appreciate it. Here's just a listing that we include on all of the slide decks that we post, which is helpful links to a lot of the different websites that are most common anyways for individuals looking for potential funding opportunities that might be out there. Next slide. Upcoming events. So these are on the website as well. But of course, be a part of the slide deck that gets posted here for that. As always, lots and lots of opportunity out there for conferences and expeditions and things like that to be able to attend. If you're interested in any of these, some of them, of course, are here in Ohio. Many of them are outside the state in Washington, D.C. and some other places on that as well. Next slide. All right. Thank you to everybody to joining today. Thanks for all of everybody that helped put together the presentations. Thanks to our incredible speakers today. That was excellent presentations on that. And thank you to all of our Ohio Federal Research Network partners and teams that are working on round 6 right now, and those previously for that too. So we'll be sending out information, or excuse me, Becky will send out email to everybody as soon as the slides get posted on our website, which is ohiofrn.org. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day today and a safe summer. Very hot out there, so please be careful. Drink plenty of water. Hydrate, 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 as they always say in the military. Anybody else? Last things, Becky, that we need to mention?
One last thing to mention is we have a quick survey as you exit the meeting. If you just take a couple seconds to complete it, we would appreciate your feedback.
See, there was one last question about foreign researchers. So some of the organizations do, some of them don't. So it really just depends on what specifically you're interested in. For that, you can reach out to those of us that are listed here if you'd like with what you're interested in. I'm sorry, Charlie, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, just went off mute just to say thank you again.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, everybody take care. Have a great day, and we will see you soon.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you.